takes 8 years to build a brand. When you launch a brand or a company, there's all this outside noise. One of the biggest lessons I've learned is
Nate Checketts started 4 companies before the age of 30, including the 9-figure apparel brand Rhone. And he realized the key to success is the one thing most people overlook.
there are key habits that you need to identify that unlock the other habits. It's consistency, then you add intensity, and then you add technique. But people jump to technique because they feel like it's easier.
What does work-life balance look like for the world's top CEOs?
I realized I spend all this time and energy on long-range planning, and I'm not bringing that same level of thinking to my marriage, to my home.
I could run through a wall right now, bro.
Yeah.
I could run through a wall. We can go 10 hours. How can your business transform when you really start focusing on the most important things?
I started like firing off all these things that I've been wondering about, and he was like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh, there are simple answers to these questions that I thought were so complicated.
That is the number one best form of marketing is... Nate, I did not expect to be in Connecticut again, but here we are.
Again.
Yeah. And when I put the original list together, there was 100+ names. There was 2 names in Connecticut. You were one of the 2 names. And Bill actually mentioned you on the episode. So
yeah,
really, really excited to be here. And I would have judged you if you were wearing a Mets hat. I'm happy you're wearing a Yankee hat. So we could start there.
I'm honored to be on any podcast Bill's on. And I mean, look, the Mets have Soto. It's a new day.
The Mets are the Bills. The Mets are the Cowboys. We can go on and on about that. But yeah, so typically we would just dive like deep into business. For context for everybody listening, co-founder and CEO of Rhone, you, your brother, and 3 others, 9-figure company started in 2014. Kind of like a work leisure, I would say like luxury performance apparel. I'm wearing it right now for everybody watching. But I think the big thing that I want to dive into is this mental fitness, this platform that you guys have built. I've heard of mental health. This mental fitness with kind of balances the mental and the physical. I found it very, very intriguing. So I want to start with just what is this 12 Pursuits program you have? I was very intrigued by that.
Yeah. So when I was 19 years old, one of my mentors gave me this book that mentioned Benjamin Franklin. It kind of went into detail on Benjamin Franklin's life. And this was a guy who had accomplished a lot at a very young age. I mean, he was like the original founder. He was struggling with this idea that he needed to focus more on self-improvement. And he created a list that he called his 13 virtues. The number 13 wasn't a random number. You know, Benjamin Franklin was a renowned mathematician, really intelligent guy. And it didn't have any nostalgic factor to do with, you know, American history, 13 colonies. It was because 13 went into 52 evenly, 4 times. And his goal and idea was, you know, self-improvement is an overwhelming topic. Like, you know, it's like, oh, you need to be better in your, you know, in your exercise and your sleep routine and like all these different factors. For him, it was more like honesty and integrity and temperance and, you know, all these different principles. And so he thought if he could focus on them for 4 weeks at a time, he could make meaningful improvement and then he could move on to the next one. And I remember being like, whoa, this is interesting. But I immediately thought, I wonder what I would put on my own list. And the idea came back after we had kind of started Rhone, because one of the things that we started talking about is there's so much garbage on social media and in the quote unquote wellness industry on what it takes to be well, to be healthy. And naturally, we are wired to look for quick fixes. You know, it's the dopamine brain of, I got to take this supplement. I got to try this new workout fad. I got to try, you know, all these different kind of simple hacks. And that's what social media feeds to us, right? It's like,
Of course.
These 5 foods you've been eating all your life are actually terrible for you. And like this one trick will take 3 inches off your waistline. And it's clickbait and it works. But really, 80% of our health and wellness is based on very simple consecutive habits. And so when we started thinking about this, we're like, what would be on that list? And I was like, we could create our own 13 virtue list. But then when we thought about it, we're like, well, there's already 12 months in a year. That seems silly. Let's just do 12, half of which were more kind of physical fitness related activities, and then half of which were more mental health related activities. but all of them kind of support each other. And then what we do as a company is we bring in a speaker or an expert internally to talk about that topic, and we give challenges and we do rewards. And the idea is that if we can teach people to create good, healthy habits, that will do so much more for them than finding the next fitness wearable or this new supplement or this, magic mattress that's going to somehow transform your life.
And that's definitely individually and then holistically as a company. They're improving as an individual, and then by default, obviously the company's doing way better.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer that if you can help people to have stronger personal lives, they're going to be more productive employees, but that's not why we do it. I mean, I think the reason why we do it is because I need the medicine as much as anybody else. Like, I'm so intrigued by this idea of self-improvement. I always have been. And the older I get, the more I'm convinced that simplicity is the answer and complexity is the enemy, and consistency is what ultimately wins the day.
So let's dive into a couple of these. So to give everybody context, January was the progress starts here, and then just kind of flushing out all of them. Sleep, hydration, breath work, nutrition, move, go outdoors, learn, social, self-care, gratitude, and serve. So going back into it, you go in, you bring in somebody to speak. Let's just dive deeper into that. Is there any type of almost like programming, or is it just like an open conversation where everybody is sharing what they're learning that month?
Yeah, it depends on the speaker. So for example, I don't know if you know Jesse Itzler.
Of course.
Jesse's a fantastic guy. He's become a friend over time, but he has this program that he does annually called the Big Ass Calendar.
I do that with my girlfriend.
Yeah. It's fantastic. I'm a big believer in it. I had used the product for a few years, and I said to Jesse, I want to give everybody in my company one of these. And January is all about perspective and vision and kind of setting the year up. So Jesse came and just knocked it out of the park. I mean, he is a fantastic speaker. And what he did is he talked about how having a perspective on the year impacts how, the way you live your days ultimately builds your weeks, and your weeks build your months, and your months build your year. So you've got to think about the year in order to have these incredible days and set yourself up for success by planning these things as far ahead as possible. His whole vision on misogis and, Kevin's rule. And
to give people context as well too, it is literally a big ass calendar.
It's with
these different color sticky notes.
Yeah.
And the Kevin's rule is what? It's like every month.
6 weeks.
Every 6 weeks you do like kind of one big thing.
Yeah, that you wouldn't typically do. It's something like a life experience that you're like, oh, I've always wanted to go take a cooking class. Well, put it on your calendar. Or I want to make sure that we hike this one mountain, put it on your calendar. And at the end of the year, you will have accumulated all these great things that come off of your I want to do one day list, and you're like, I did it. And then a misogi is one big year defining moment or goal that you have. So last year for me, I had decided I wanted to do an 80-kilometer ruck in Normandy on the anniversary of the 80th D-Day. And so went with some friends. Go Ruck had an event that they were doing. And my grandfather was a World War II Marine. I'll never forget that moment for the rest of my life. Got to be there with really close friends and have an incredible experience.
So that was, he came in, you gift everybody the calendar, and then it's just communication all month. And then obviously moving forward, that kind of goes throughout the whole entire year.
Yeah. So the challenge for that month was fill out the calendar, set your misogi, set your Kevin's rules, and come back and talk about it. So we have a whole Slack channel called the 12 Pursuits. And then February, which is all about sleep, we brought in an awesome guy named Todd Anderson, who is one of the co-founders of a company called Dream Recovery. They make this like really beautiful sleep tape. I use the product every night. Like it's really good.
I've done the sleep tape before. That stuff works. It's kind of scary at first, but that shit works.
It definitely works. Like I was so skeptical, but I am somebody who tracks my sleep, and like my deep sleep went up like something crazy, like 15% the first month I started using it. And I didn't realize like maybe I have slight sleep apnea. My wife was like, you never snore at all anymore. Like I'm a big believer in it. They also make beautiful sleep masks and pillowcases, and Todd's just an awesome guy. So he came and he goes around the country coaching professional athletes. He was an NFL player and talks about, how sleep impacts work productivity, how it impacts relationships, how it impacts, there's McKinsey did a study that if a CEO is getting on average less than like 6 hours of sleep a
I've
night,
seen that.
their, the likelihood of internal turmoil and like negative toxicity in the work environment is like up like a crazy amount. So anyways, he gave that to us. We gave a challenge for people to, I think there were 3 challenges, like all the same stuff that we know. Turn off your digital screens 30 minutes before you go to bed. Aim to be in bed for 8.5 to 9 hours a night, to get to 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep. And then people just talked about it. And by the end of the month, you're not where you want to be. I mean, you're not like perfectly getting 8 hours
But
of
it
sleep.
jumpstarts it.
But you jumpstart it and you're just focused on that one thing. And the idea is that it then carries through. So then March is all about hydration, and everybody knows they should be drinking so much water. But when you're measuring it and tracking it, after 30 days, you've kind of created this new habit. And the idea is those habits stack. It's the atomic habits principle. And those habits stack over time. You get meaningfully better. You feel challenged to do it in a community-based setting. So it's a research-backed way to make advances on, simple wellness practices.
To jump back into the sleep, something that was huge for me, and it's so crazy because it just takes about a month. I sleep with an Oura ring, and understanding and knowing, it's so funny because when I'd look at it with my girl, she'd always be like, we didn't sleep for that much, or we slept for less than that. So for me, I found out it probably only took about a month, like 8 hours and 25 minutes is what I actually need to sleep. And then going and looking through the Oura ring, you see the latency, you see the deep sleep, you see that to get 8 hours and 25 minutes, you know that you need to be in bed for maybe 8 hours and 45 minutes or 9 hours. And then you start targeting, hey, I need to be in bed at 9:30, 10 o'clock, just so you can kind of
shifts your habits, right?
It shifts.
I mean, that's what, it's funny because we talked about Bill from Athletic Brewing, like that was part of the genesis of Athletic Brewing is he was tracking his performance. And he immediately realized that alcohol consumption was a huge impact on sleep, which had an impact on his triathlon performance. That's where wearables can be so powerful. I was an original investor in Oura.
Wow.
And I love Whoop. I met Will when he was starting there. I don't wear either of them anymore actively because it's like, once you get it, you're like, all right, I know the things that I need to do. And I know when I'm, impacting myself negatively. And there's also some research that like people are becoming hyper-focused on and it's having negative impacts on sleep performance because it's like you start worrying and you start having anxiety about like, what's my sleep score going to be? But I think if you understand those key principles and building blocks of what makes health and wellness, again, you stack those wins, that's 80% of it. There's something about physical performance that people want to dial into a workout plan, but it's like, hey, let's start by moving your body for 30 minutes a day, 5 to 6 days a week. Then you can move into the next thing. It's consistency, then you add intensity, and then you add technique. But people jump to technique because they feel like it's an easy solution. Really, it's about just building the habit, then you can lean into it. And that for me has been so true in every aspect of my life.
Very similar. You see first quantity, then quality, and then quantity and quality.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. What would you say of the 12 pursuits is the most overlooked? Like where have you seen people are really at like a 0 out of 10 and then even some sort of small incremental jump there were like, wow.
I would say breathwork is the one that like immediately comes to mind because—
Which is the one that I am 100% the worst at.
Yeah. You think about all the knowledge we've gained in the millennia that humanity has existed, right? But I also think about what are the like deep lost truths that, maybe people 500 years or 1,000 years ago knew. And I think one of them might be breathwork. In fact, you even hear like an insult in England is you're a mouth breather, but so many people mouth breathe now. And I think we underestimate what it does to our health, what it does to, our sleep quality. And I'm not good at it. Like I try and focus on it, but there's such remarkable results in terms of physical recovery. I had a breathwork trainer that I worked with, and he taught me how to breathe when I was strength training. And all of a sudden I'm seeing like 10, 15, 20% gains on the same lifts just because I've learned how to breathe through them better. And it's not just the breath work as you're doing it, it's the pre-breath work. It's building yourself up for, that aerobic or anaerobic capacity. And then also to down-regulate. I get a chance to speak to a lot of schools and they have no idea basic things like, the double inhale, the Huberman made famous, or box breathing. And these things—
For context too, I didn't know about the double inhale until 2 years ago.
Yeah,
and
no, it's become kind of move to the forefront. And there are these little cool hacks and techniques that if you understand, oh, wait, I'm feeling anxious. My heart's beating fast. What can I do before I go into this meeting? I'm going on a podcast. How can I down regulate to make sure that I'm in the right place? You are fully equipped with this. It's like you're on an all you can eat cruise and you're refusing to eat because you don't want to spend the money. Like that's what's happening. And once people understand, oh, wow, this breath work is always available to me. And if I focus on it and I learn some basic techniques, it can help me fall asleep. It can help me in my fitness. It can help me with my relationships. It can help me with my mental health. I think it's often overlooked.
And for context, like what type of daily investment do you have to make into that? What? 5 minutes?
No, I would say there's a level of mindfulness, which is like the peak of where you want to get to. But yeah, it's not a lot. I'm not talking about meditation. I'm not talking about like 20 minutes of dedicated. I'm just talking about being more mindful of your breath as you're going into places. You can be walking into the restroom. You can be driving your car. Understanding the power of your breath and the impact that it has on your body and the connection. In theory, it shouldn't cost you any more on your time.
That's such an amazing perk that you have for the company. Is just the general awareness, them seeing and knowing. And you've been doing these same 12 for years now, correct?
Yeah.
So they know what the general structure is when they come into the company immediately.
We've been leaning into it more and more. And the goal is to bring it to, consumer facing, because my deepest desire is to positively impact people's mental fitness. The last 10 to 15 years have been so hyper-focused on performance. And that's why you see, huge rises in home health equipment. But we're starting to see a shift towards recovery. And recovery is really, really important. And I think the research shows that this has actually been a bigger issue among women than it has been among men. They're doing so many high intensity studio classes that it's actually having negative health impacts on them because they're taking their body to a max too many times without bringing the proper recovery stamp, and having that in. Aura and Whoop will teach you about like, when are you in your green recovery? How do you feel when you're in that? That's when you can go after it. What are the tools that will get you back to that recovery? It's sleep. It's better nutrition. It's better basic building habits. So I think these next 10 years will be about teaching people how to recover their body in addition to having high performance so that they can continue to perform at a high level for a longer period of time.
So this is strictly internally. I see kind of little pieces of it externally, but it's not from a structure perspective.
We haven't like productized it, but it is, we talk about it externally and I talk about it publicly because, by the way, we have no pride of authorship on this. Like anybody can do this program and everybody's invited to it. But my goal would be to find a way to make it more community driven, because what the research shows is that when you do things together as a community, it's like if you have a workout partner, you're much more likely to complete a workout session consistently or a workout program. And so if you do these in a community-based setting, there's a level of appropriate peer pressure. It's like, hey, we're all working on sleep together. So I was looking at our Slack channel this morning and somebody was like, how was everybody's sleep last night? And people are like posting sleep scores and
they're flexing
talking about
on high scores.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I love this. Like, there's an element of peer pressure to get better sleep.
I can tell you, man, obviously looking underneath the hood as much as I can on the internet at your brand. I know the guys, I know Andy and the guys at First Form. Yeah. When they did 75 hard, I don't know if you've heard of 75 hard. Yeah, I've done that before. And first off, it was life-changing. But that unlocked their whole entire company. The virality of that on TikTok, the number of people on that hashtag people can check, it's fucking crazy, bro.
Yeah.
When you do that and put it forward facing, like me, when I looked at it, I structure my life kind of a little bit similar with this. Our company runs off EOS.
Oh, cool.
It's from the book Traction.
Yeah.
But then my actual personal life, both personally and with my girlfriend, we do monthly. We go over all of these. It's basically 12, but it's like, are we there for each other emotionally? Boundaries. Are we on the same page from finance, from lifestyle?
That's cool.
And 1 to 10. Notes and action steps.
Yeah.
And then obviously, it's color coordinated where, if it's going down, it's in red. If it's going up, it's in green.
Yeah.
And that's just something that we do to track.
Very cool.
That's something that I know people on my team do, and people love it. When I tell people about it, they're like, yo, send me that.
Yeah,
it's just a Google, it's just a Google sheet.
Yeah.
But when you do that and then you have the product to pair with it, Dude, I think of all the things you're doing, that is going to be like where the escape, obviously you guys are doing well anyway, but like escape velocity, it's going to go crazy.
I just think this is such an important principle in life. My wife and I remember this was probably 10 years ago now. We have 3 boys. Our oldest is 16. So at the time we had a 6, 4, and 1-year-old, and life was crazy. Like I was an entrepreneur. I was trying to like keep up with everything that was going on in the startup environment. And we would have these conversations about like, are we having enough date nights? Are we taking care of, our relationship? Are we doing, and what came out of that is I took her away on a birthday weekend trip, and we went to stay at like this cabin in the Catskills. I mean, we couldn't afford to like go super nice. So it was like, found this like little bed and breakfast, and she didn't know this. I like packed the bags. And we got there, and then I pulled out of the back of my car a giant whiteboard, and she was like, "What are you doing?" Like, she knows me well enough. We've been married 20 years, so yeah. She's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, I realized that at my company, I spend all this time and energy on long range planning, budgeting, forecasting. How efficient are we running our meetings? And I'm not bringing that same level of thinking to my marriage, to my home. So every year now, we do this 3 to 4 day annual couples trip, and we have the same list of things that we talk about. We go through. We have created so many amazing family cultural things that still exist. We have a family cheer that we do nightly. I know it sounds cheesy, but we do it. We set a family goal every year. Last year it was to learn Spanish, and we took a trip to Peru to go, and that was the reward for the goal. But I just think having intention with your life, people miss that. And when you can bring that level of intentionality to what you do every day, you bring a level of richness out of your work, out of your life, out of your marriage, out of your relationship that I think most people are craving right now.
Yeah, quite frankly, I obviously hadn't found the right girl to do it with.
Yeah.
With what we do monthly meetings. So it's
cool.
every other. It's a dinner or the spa, and we do that.
Yeah.
And then you can obviously track against it.
Yep.
So what else? You said you guys learned Spanish. I want to know a couple other, like with your family, what else have you guys done?
So the very first goal that we had, my wife was like, the kids are eating too much dessert. So we set a no sugar goal.
That's tough.
Yeah, which was like
with
super
young
bold.
Kids.
But they had a cheat day. I mean, I think this is when the youngest was maybe 2 or 3. So he was like mostly excluded, but there was a cheat day every month. So it was like Halloween, their birthday. Thankfully, everybody's birthday's in a different month, but it was no desserts for a year. And I still remember my middle son, who was like, his dream was to open a candy store at one point. We would go to his soccer games, and I'll tell you what, whoever drives the Mr. Softy ice cream truck,
killing it.
That dude he's winning.
Yeah.
Because he knows exactly where to show up at the right moment, play the music. So every soccer game, that guy would be there, and every game my son would cry. He'd be like, "Dad, I just don't understand." I'm like, "Hey, we made this goal together as a family. Like, remember that at the end, I think the reward that year was like, we just gave them like they all picked out like a big toy that they could get at the end of the year." And I was like, "Remember, the commitment that you made." And then I still remember fall soccer. So this was spring soccer. Fall soccer, we get there. Mr. Softy guy pulls up, music starts playing, and he's like, "This is hard, but I got this." And just seeing his evolution of like setting a goal that was pushing him. And then, I know parents will be like, "This guy's cruel. How could he take ice cream away from his kid?" I'm like, it's not about the ice cream for me. I'm just trying to help him understand that he is capable of whatever he sets his mind to. And that, yes, things are hard, but the more we persist in doing things, the easier they become for us to do. That is one of my favorite quotes. It's that which we persist in doing becomes easier for us to do. Not that the nature of the thing itself has changed, but that our power to do has increased. So is resisting ice cream hard? Yeah. But the more you do it, the easier it is to do. And it doesn't mean that it's changed. Nothing's changed. It's just your ability to resist that has increased. And so that's, like for our kids learning Spanish, we set a goal to all learn Spanish over the course of the year, and they had to do Duolingo every day. And we were like friend quests and, challenging each other. And Yeah, that is so awesome. I mean, but all of this has come from these annual family goal setting meetings that my wife and I have, and it's the best. We look forward to that more than anything else.
I love this because just last night, my parents were arguing with me that I'm not going to be able to, I want to run my family like I do a business and be very structured. Like,
Yeah.
and they said I can't, like, oh, you're going to have 2 little girls and they're going to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, there's going to be discipline and structure with them as well, no matter what it is.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are, life's unpredictable. You never know what will happen with your kids or with anything else. But I do think you can bring your best level of thinking to the most important thing in your life. And I think intention in any arena of your life is going to help.
Love it. The one big thing that I just want to jump into before we move on here is in September, you're doing, in August, you're doing Learn. Someone like you, I know without knowing, you're a learning machine. How are you getting smarter?
You know, I find that the best way to learn anything is to find an expert in that field and to start there and to ask really good questions. And I'm a big believer in coaches. I love to set these like random challenges for myself to, get better at singing or to get better. And, so I'm not at all above hiring great coaches in any arena. And I like surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me, which is a low bar. So, I can find really talented, smart people. And sometimes they want payment and sometimes they're like, oh, I'm just happy to do this. But yeah, that's usually where I start when I'm trying to learn something, is to just be really curious, ask lots of questions.
And that's just Googling, going on LinkedIn, finding the best in class and just reaching out to them and saying, hey, I want to get better at this.
It's funny. I mean, I thought maybe that would change as like business was more successful, but I love a good cold reach out to like somebody I'm eager to meet. And it could be the most random person to like, to everybody else. But I'm like, do you know that this individual is like super specialized in this one thing and I cannot wait to talk to them.
So your husband, your father, obviously you have kids. I could tell you're in good shape. You're working on your mental. The business is in a good position right now. What type of like systems and tools are you using outside of what we spoke about?
Yeah. The main tool that I really love, and I have to give them a plug, is a product called the Productivity Journal. It's by a group called Intelligent Change, which was founded by a good friend of mine, Alex Icon. You should have him on the podcast. He's an awesome, awesome guy.
What's his name?
Alex Icon. He's famous for the 5-Minute Journal, which Tim Ferriss, kind of made popular and brought, made popular in the U.S. But Alex is one of those guys who I've spent a ton of time with him, and he just lives exactly what he talks about. I mean, he is just authentic to the core. But the Productivity Journal is like the 5-Minute Journal on steroids. It's somebody like you and me. I love going deep. So it starts with, what are he calls them rocks. What are the rocks that you're trying to accomplish in a quarter? They're 3-month-long journals. Every day has its own, 2 pages. What are the things I'm trying to accomplish this day? You write those down, Pomodoro method, like how many 20-minute increments is it going to take for you to get these things done? But actually, to be honest with you, like that I still use. I have tried every level of complexity. I mean, I made this crazy Google spreadsheet for tracking all of my habits and behaviors at one point, and everything that I had been working on. But I find that the simplest tools now are like I use the Productivity Journal, and then I use the Notes app on my phone, and those are the 2 things that I'm like heavily relying on.
Big Notes app guy, and ironically, the rocks, that's actually one of the core things in EOS. So
yeah.
that's funny. So you're saying you do that every single morning you're doing that?
Yeah, it's a check-in in the morning and in the evening, but the big function that drives the whole journal is the weekly planning, which is, it's basically 20 to 30 minutes of setting your intention, going back to your rocks, making sure that you're spending appropriate time with them. There's I've actually done this with my kids because I believe in this so wholeheartedly. You've got to put first things first, which is the Stephen Covey principle, right? And so if you take like a big jar and you give them tennis balls and ping pong balls and marbles, and you say, all right, I want you to put all the marbles in this jar, then put all the ping pong balls, then put the tennis balls. What happens? You can't fit any of the tennis balls in there because there's not space. All right, now start with the tennis balls, add the ping pong balls, then add the marbles. And what you find is it all fits because, that's how life is. Put the first things first, And then, you can do it with rocks, and then, the last thing is sand. You can do it with anything. But the main point is when you prioritize what matters most, then you tend to find a way to make room for everything else. But if you start chasing the things that don't matter and those become where you're spending your time, you don't have time for the things that matter most. You can't fit it in. So I think it's a powerful visual.
So people want to know, someone like you, like, what does a day look like or what does a week look like? And obviously I would imagine that you're doing a lot of things. You're traveling, family. Yeah. But what are kind of those core tenets outside of the 5-minute journal? Yeah. Is it like a morning routine, a night routine?
Yeah. I mean, I've been on a number of podcasts where this question gets asked, and I feel like it's a little bit of a dangerous proposition to answer just because I think everybody's world is so different. I've done the 5 a.m. club thing for a long time, but what I really genuinely believe is there are key habits that you need to identify that unlock the other habits. And for me, it took me a long time to figure this out. And it's so simple that going to bed early is the key habit that unlocks everything.
I agree with you.
Like, I used to think it was the key habit is you got to wake up early, but that didn't mean anything about when you went to bed. So I was like driving myself crazy, getting 3, 4, 5 hours of sleep, trying to function. And then inevitably, like, you break down. You can't do it all. And I'm like, this isn't healthy. This isn't good. So now my wife and I, we are in bed, no joke, 9:15, like, pretty consistently.
I'm in that arena as well too.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe like because we celebrate the burning candles on both ends, like I maybe was embarrassed about that, but but we're up, at 5:15 most days. My son has an early morning Bible study class that he goes to at 6:20. So we've got to be up, lunches are made for the kids. We alternate days on which ones we take. I'm a big believer in getting my workout in. It's like, that is my happy place. I love doing it. Sometimes I'll do it with friends. Sometimes I do it solo. And then daily planning. Those 3 things like matter a lot to me. And it's a big driver of who I am. I also love to start and end every day with prayer. It's like, not everybody's spiritual, but for me, it's like a good centering, humbling, I'm not the most important thing in the universe. So those are all habits that I really believe in.
I had done the 5 a.m. club before. Now I'm more of like a 5:30-ish, 5:45 guy. If you don't have your significant other on the same page with that, it becomes very, very weird socially, because it was a huge shock to her when I was going to sleep at 9:30. She's like, "You're an old man. What are you doing? Like, you need to get on the same page, or it's not possible." And then you end up sleeping 4 hours, 5 hours, and then you're just screwing yourselves on both sides.
It's funny because one of the pieces of advice somebody gave to us when we got married is like, go to bed together. But my wife is naturally someone who goes to bed early. I am not. I have like serious ADD. We'd get in bed at the same time, but I'd go to bed like 2.5 hours after her, and I'd find something to like keep me up. But over time, she's won the day, because the truth is like, you do need to be on the same page. But I would always wake up before her, and now she's like pushing me. So yeah, I mean, I think you've got to have a schedule that works. And I do think generally you should be striving to be in bed for 8+ hours a night. I think that's a really good, healthy habit.
A lot of that's genetic. For me, it's 8 hours and 25 minutes. Yeah. But some people are just crazy, and they could operate on way less sleep. To tie that up, you mentioned atomic habits. Obviously, there's all of these buckets, nutrition and fitness and such. What's like a 1 or 2 atomic habits that you do? Like for me, I don't wear the Oura ring all day, and I have it right next to my bed, and I put it on
just before bed.
Yeah.
That's what it's great at is bedtime. I think atomic habits should be like required reading for everybody in this country.
James Clear, Atomic Habits. Everybody read it. Great Instagram follow. It's amazing.
He's brilliant, but what he does is he demystifies the fact that like the answer is goal setting, and like just setting some big enormous goal, and that's the answer. The answer is really the daily practices that lead to the goal that you're trying to achieve. And that's why I love it so much. But I think this year, one of the things I struggle with, and this is like my ADD, is like, if you were to go in my car, it's a little bit messy. You go by my bedside, it's a little bit messy. You go to my office, a little bit messy. And I decided this year, I'm like, I need to break this. Like, and it's solvable. It's all within reach. So I started by being like, I'm never going to have a messy desk. And I was like, nope, that's the wrong approach. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set 10 minutes a day just spend on organizing, right? Because this goes back to this idea of like consistency, intensity, technique. So I don't need to go full GTD on everything to be organized, getting things done. I just need to like give myself the time and make the habit of prioritizing keeping things organized. And so I'm like a month into that journey, and I am shocked how much of a difference it makes. It's 10 minutes, but like my bedside is cleaner. My wife is like, "What is going on with you?" I'm like, "I'm just trying this thing and it's working." And so, my hope is that like, and I'm already seeing it starting to impact some of these other things. So, I think you can apply this Atomic Habits framework to just about anything you want to improve in your life.
Yeah. All about the inputs, and that basically solves the outputs. All right. Let's get into the business side. We focus on the mental side. So let's start with product. I think it's very rare for an apparel brand to basically have your moat is the product, I think, in some sense. This GoldFusion technology that you have.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. What is GoldFusion and how'd you come up with it?
Yeah, GoldFusion is a really unique technology that's an anti-odor treatment and antibacterial treatment on our product. And we found it with this group that had created for agricultural crop disease. So the problem with agriculture is there are unique diseases that evolve over time, almost like COVID, right? But specific to crops. And they can evolve and they can literally cripple a farm. They needed to find a way to create something that was antibacterial to fight off this, crop disease that was also non-toxic and eco-friendly, because obviously they don't want to poison the food sources. In clothing, what is typically used is these topical-based sprays that are effectively pesticides. And that's because that's what we use to kill bacteria. But the issue is these clothes are touching the largest organ on your body, which is your skin. And over time, these topical sprays wash out of the product. So their adhesion or the adherence rate goes down over time. Where do you think it goes? It goes into your laundry, which goes into your water, or it goes into your skin. So not good, right? And I remember the first time someone was explaining this to me, and I was like, holy cow. And the industry standard for this is after 20 washes, it just needs to be 50% effective still. So after you've washed a workout shirt 20 times, it's going to start, polyester basically will grab onto the dead skin cells and absorb that odor. So if you have anything that is an old workout clothes from an inferior place, go grab it, smell it. If you get that musky scent, first of all, it's your own dead skin that's flaking off into it and it's adhering to it. But second of all, you've got a really cheap piece of workout product. And these topical sprays, they're not good for the environment. They're not good for your skin. They're not good, and they don't even work well. So I got introduced to this group. It was a PhD chemist and
Who introduced you? Let's give them a shout out, because that was a big introduction. Whoever did that.
It was one of our investors. He's like, I'm also invested in this one company. He's like, they're starting to play around with textiles. Like, I feel like you guys should talk. So I went and met them, and it was like this full-on laboratory. So a PhD chemist and a PhD physicist. And so they were like, yeah, we've been playing around this for like towels and laundry and sheets. He's like, and we thought maybe it could be used for workout clothing. And I was like, well, we got to prove this out. There's FDA clearance and all these other things. So we started testing with it. And at 100 washes, it was still 98% effective against odor. And so the adherence rate was substantially stronger, and it's non-toxic and eco-friendly. The solution that is used to create it, you can drink. You can absolutely drink it.
I think the non-toxic, eco-friendly thing is that discussion is really starting
to pick up.
Yeah. It is so crazy, man. You wear some of these big name brands, I don't want to call them out. Yeah. It's literally bad for your health.
I think we're still so early innings on where this is going to go. People have been talking about sustainability for the last 10, 12 years, and there's a lot that's happening there, but it's enormously complex. For example, people have started to use more BPA recycled water bottles, and what's happening is the content in those plastic water bottles that are being recycled are showing, kind of higher levels of this PFAS, which is, these forever chemicals that people are like, these microplastics that people are trying to avoid. So it's like, well, you can choose the sustainability path, which could also have a potential negative impact on your health. And so that's why you're starting to see introduction of more things like organic cotton, merino wool. We strive to be more sustainable. We don't talk a lot about it because I feel like there's so much greenwashing out there. And so we don't call it sustainability. We call it responsibility. We think about making the responsible choice for the environment, the responsible choice for our customers, and the responsible choice for our supply chain. Sometimes you're making trade-offs, but usually we try and maximize, across there. And I think this is, as people get better at testing and states like California start to increase standards, you're going to see companies have to make big shifts in this space.
I'm in your funnel. I'm getting a lot of ads. I feel like that value prop needs to be a little louder.
Yeah.
You're saying 20 washes versus 100 washes?
Yeah.
That's everything for me from a blank t-shirt perspective. Like I just bought this. I'm very excited to see how it washes.
Yep.
Like I'm just, for a white t-shirt for me, I'm done. Usually 10, 15 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, this technology or what do you want? How is it actually embedded into the product?
So it happens at the fabric level. So it gets infused into the garment at the fabric level, and then that fabric will get cut and sent to the cut and sew or the manufacturer.
So you can now infuse this in your whole entire product line if you wanted to.
We can. Yeah.
Amazing. I was very surprised when I went to the store and I went online. You guys have a ton of different products.
Yep.
A really, really wide range. I'd love to know, for people that are starting off, they start with a t-shirt and hoodie. What has been the biggest challenge as far as like extending that product range?
Yeah, I think our breadth is both our biggest strength and our biggest challenge. We started as a purely active brand, only making workout clothes. That's where we saw the opportunity. That's what I was excited about. That's what I care about. But eventually we ended up building this pant, which was like a hybrid pant called the commuter pant, and it sold out in 2 weeks. So after we launched it, we were like, oh, wow, our customers giving us permission to do more in this space. So then we launched the commuter shirt a few years later, and those two products have been a huge part of our business. And it's, so it's funny to hear you kind of introduce this as like a work leisure brand, because I've never thought of us that way. I think about us as like a performance apparel brand. And the goal is to, embed performance into every product that we make. We've done outerwear. We've done, we came out with a beautiful woven overcoat that has, real stretch to it. So we just think about performance being the foundation that we live on. And the customer's given us a lot of flexibility there, because we see guys who buy workout shorts from us, and then they buy dress shirts from us. And that makes them enormously valuable customers. But it makes it a challenge to understand, where do you stop that? Like, we could, in theory, make anything. We have very high quality standards, but it becomes complex in how you tell that story online, how you tell that story to the customer, how you tell that story in the stores. So I think we're still on that journey.
How do you decide what product medium? Are you guys doing any type of surveys? Are you just going off intuition? Are you starting with a small test? If it does well, then you go into production?
We do a ton of focus groups. Like, that is a huge part of what we do. We do a lot of wear testing. And so I'm always challenging the team, fewer better, because the first company I started, you and I were talking about this before we started here, was a mobile software company. And when I started that company, somebody gave me this book called The Inmates Are Running the Asylum. And the premise of the book was that engineers who are so smart and so capable were bleeding into product design. And he gave the example of the VCR. You only needed a VCR to press play, stop, pause, rewind, fast forward. But an engineer came in and was like, here's all the things the VCR could do. You could pre-program it to schedule and record your favorite show. But 98% of the users didn't need that. So now you see a VCR, it's loaded with all these buttons, it's loaded with all this complexity, and the average user is like, where's the play button? Where's the fast forward? And so this is what Apple did so well, is they simplified, what does the 98% of the customer need to do? And we'll allow the machine to be super capable, but we're going to focus in on making it painfully simple to use. And the challenge that we have with design or designers is, if you give someone an empty room and a paintbrush and they're an artist, they're going to fill the room. So you have to add in appropriate constraints to drive the best innovation. You have to say, hey, actually, this is the only wall you can paint on. Do your best work. They have the same amount of time, but now you've given them a constraint, and therefore you're going to see a better option. So for us, we start with development counts, adoption rates, CC targets, style targets. And that means that with our team, we can only develop a certain number of styles in a season. We have to adopt a certain number of them. And we can only have CCs as just like a color of a style, either a new or an existing style. And that forces a level of constraint to drive better innovation in the product. I love the analogy of a kite. When you think about a kite flying high in the air, you could see how a kid would say, well, let's let go of the string, or let's cut the string, because then it can just go higher and higher. But in reality, the constraint is what is allowing it to fly. So I tell our team, I can't cut this constraint. You might feel more free and more flexible, but eventually it will lead to the end. So there's an element of discipline in how we merchandise and how we develop. And it comes back to resource constraints and, doing fewer, better things to make sure that every time we release a product, you as the customer know we did homework, we did wear tests, we didn't just like come up with this and be like, yeah, of course we can make it. We really made sure that it was going to be best in class.
And by doing all that, especially in the focus group, you'd think it's objective, but have you guys ever done stuff where all roads said that, hey, this is going to go well, and then it didn't go well? Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah, for sure that's happened. I mean, there have been times where we've had products where we're like, this is a total home run. It's really great. The focus group, the wear test, all check the boxes, and it's like, it didn't sell very well.
So what would you say is the biggest mistake that you've made when you're trying to launch a new product?
I think, the biggest mistake.
Buying too much inventory?
Yeah, I was buying too much inventory of something that didn't end up being great. I mean, I think the biggest mistake we've made is trying to do too many things in the same category versus like just giving the customer a really clear guideline of what to make. So when we made the commuter shirt, which has been in the top 5 sellers of our company since we launched it, our product development team came back with 3 shirts. And they were like, we want to do all of these.
3 different iterations of the commuter shirt?
No, 3 different fabrications. And they were like, we should make all of these. They're all great. And I remember thinking, okay, but how are we going to convince the customer to buy one of these? Because they're just going to be like, well, these are the same 3 shirts that I see in every store. But this one shirt, which became the commuter shirt, was so lightweight, so differentiated, so comfortable. I don't know if you saw it in the store today.
Did.
I mean, I've run a marathon in this thing. It is unbelievable. It is definitively better than every shirt on the market. And
super light. It felt more athletic to me.
Yeah.
Than like, I was deciding what I was going to wear for the podcast, and I went with this shirt. But yeah.
It honestly looks, and it's made out of an Italian fabric. It looks like a beautiful Italian woven dress shirt, but you could wear it to work out. And if you wanted to, we've had people deadlift 600 pounds, and we've had people do all kinds of crazy things in the shirt. But I remember getting the shirt and just being like, why would we make these other ones when this one is so much better? And one of the best decisions we made is to say, we're just going to tell people this is the only dress shirt you ever need to buy.
Which I've seen on your copy.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
sense.
and so from the customer standpoint, it's super clear. And I think one of the mistakes that is easy to make, and we've made it a million times, is that when you launch a brand or a company, there's all this outside noise, customers, investors, spouses, whatever, who'll be like, you guys need to do this. You need to make kids' clothes now. You need to make, this new product. And you're like, yeah, we could do that. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. And it makes it really confusing for the customer. So we've tried to get better. We've made so many mistakes in this arena. But I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is be really clear about why you're making a product, why it's differentiated, and then tell that story as clearly as possible versus, muddying it up with, a million different stories.
That's some good advice there. So you're 8 or 9 years in, and then you launch women's.
Yep.
How and why did you make that decision?
That was a really data-driven decision. I mean, that's another thing where people have been telling us from the beginning we should do women's. Women's is a very different product development life cycle. We wanted to make sure if we did it really, really well. We had brought in this new chief product officer who's enormously talented. And I said to her, she's like, I really want to develop women's product. I was like, there's no way we're launching women's product until you can prove to me that it's better than other things that are in the market. And in the first 9 months of launching it, we made the Today Show and Women's Health as the best legging in the market, which is pretty incredible when you think about the competition we're going up against. And she's a special talent in the market. We worked with the number one mill globally that works with, other brands in the space, but like the high-end brands. And we gave them the mandate of what we were trying to accomplish. And we came out with this other women's product called Dream Glow, which has just crushed it and done really, really well. And we get rave reviews on. But strategically, it came from this idea that co-ed brands absolutely have a bigger addressable market than single gender brands.
Up until now as well, too, I would imagine that you had 10, 15, 20, even 30% women maybe buying for men?
30%.
There you go.
I mean, it was almost like on the nose, 30%. But, if you look at Lulu's public earnings, they will tell you 70% of their men's product is purchased by women.
Wow.
So other brands in the space that have started men's and have introduced women's, 70% of their revenue is now women's. So part of our thesis for launching Rhone was that all the premium brands end up skewing women's. And that's why there was so much white space in men's. But now the men's market has become cluttered and there's a ton of brands. There's consolidation happening in that space. But, the women's market is incredibly big. And by the way, we felt like we were missing opportunities by not having it. And they wanted to try products like GoldFusion and they wanted to try some of the fabrications that we were using. So it's been very successful for us. It 2x'd our initial forecast in the first 9 months.
So did you start small or you just went big immediately?
No, we started tight. We had a pretty tight product range, and we've kind of expanded from there. But it's hard. I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today. He's a retail consultant, and we were talking about a brand. Again, I don't want to be pejorative, but he said these guys went from 0 stores to 60 doors over like a year, retail doors that they were opening. And it was a huge mistake. They have enormous debt on the company now, and they can't get out of it. And they're closing all these doors left and right. And there was another brand that was started by the founder of Lululemon. His son and his wife started this really cool technical cashmere brand. And because he had had all this success with Lulu, he's like, we just need to go open a bunch of retail stores. So they signed 75 leases. Eesh. And the brand had to declare bankruptcy in like 18 to 24 months. And the reason is because things take time. It takes time to build in the hearts and minds of customers. Actually, Jesse Isler was somebody who said this to me really early on. He's like, it takes 8 years to build a brand. He's like, even in this market, it takes 8 years. And I just remember thinking that feels like an eternity. But I think there's a level, you can obviously accelerate these things, particularly with the power of celebrity and others. But I think in order to really build a brand that has staying power, you got to believe that it's going to take that time.
I want to talk about the challenges on the women's side. You're definitely going to get economies of scale with potentially raw fabrics.
Yeah.
Maybe from like a human perspective, obviously you don't need another CFO. But something I'm always like weary of is, our designer designed our women's collection.
Yeah.
Let's just say it didn't do that well.
Yeah.
So like, what were all of those hires that you had to make new? Like do you have to get a new CMO? You have to get a new creative director? What did that look like? Yeah,
we definitely had to double the size of the merchandising and the product development and the design team. Those were non-negotiables because actually women's is more difficult to design and develop and fit and get right than men's. So that part was a complete and total investment. But things like finance and, HR and operations, didn't even needed very little investment because those things are just on scale. So, but we, and a little bit of investment in marketing. We did bring in an amazing CMO who just joined us a few months ago she was the head of marketing of the Americas of the North Face. And nice. She's been fantastic. And, but yes, investment in the team, investment in the process, investment in the storytelling. We signed a deal with the LPGA, their first ever real apparel deal. And the LPGA is, I'm very long in women's golf. If you go back 10 years ago, 10% of all youth participation was female. Now it's 40%. So you fast forward that trajectory 10 years in the future, the game of golf is going to become even more relevant because you're going to see more women playing. That's going to add demand to golf courses. That's going to add demand to golf apparel.
Let's talk about that. Let's just go into partnerships now. I saw you sign with the NBA as well. So when you signed with the LPGA, why did you pick golf? Was that a data-driven decision, or was that something?
We had done a tremendous amount of homework on who the customer was, and for men's, they definitely play golf. That customer is interested in golf.
Let's talk about that too. When you say you've done a lot of homework, is this more
credit card data? We partner with JP Morgan, who's our bank. They're able to provide us anonymized research into our customer and into our competitor's customer. So, for example, our customer has high household income. They're very interested in health and wellness. They're interested in fitness and looking professional, but they also, are interested in things like golf. So, building a female counterpart to the male customer, we didn't initially know if golf was going to be a part of that. But as we looked at the landscape, we also thought it was a point of differentiation from an entry standpoint, because women's golf was the second fastest growing sport over the last several years behind pickleball. So more women are picking up the sport. They feel like the existing styles are very tired, very like print driven. It's like, oh, that's what my mom or my grandma would wear. And they want a level of performance in their golf apparel in the same way that men have been asking for that over the last 5 to 10 years. So we felt like we could come in with a point of differentiation. And the LPGA was just, they've been fantastic partners, helping us tell that story, why the product's better, why it's unique, why it's needed in the market. So yeah, that's why we worked with them. The NBA was also quite organic in terms of how that came up. And, they obviously have big active partnerships with other brands, but because we have this whole lifestyle component with our commuter line, we felt like that was an opportunity to partner, get a huge megaphone with them. And the commissioner, Adam Silver, is a huge fan of the product. And so he was like, he basically told his team to go get the deal done.
Amazing. I want to go back into that credit card and getting the anonymous personas.
Yep.
Ultimately, you're figuring out as much as possible about your customer, and then you're backing into, this is our core persona, and then making sure who you're picking as an influencer, how you do your marketing, your messaging, your storytelling, all goes towards there. What's like some small steps that like a smaller $2 million brand can do to take those? Like getting the credit card information, is that something does that cost a lot of money?
With us, it was just by virtue of having that existing relationship. So we didn't have to pay anything for it, which was great. But there's definitely a lot of tools that you can use. I mean, one of my favorite podcasts is, and I'm going to botch this, is the Reid Hoffman Masters of Scale.
Yeah, Masters of Scale, yep.
He basically talks about doing things that don't necessarily scale early on in the journey. So, for example, I would highly encourage owners of a brand or a company to reach out to their 100 top customers, ask them questions. Like just, you can send out a survey link, but you could also just personally like type and like say like, hey, I'm the founder, or call them. We still do that sometimes. Like I'll get notices like, I remember some guy spent $26,000 on us last year. And I was like, I don't even understand how you could own that much clothing. And he wasn't using a discount code. And I was like, so I just reached out. I was like, hey, just wanted to say thank you for, spending this much and really appreciate it. He's like, oh, he's one of these unique people who have multiple homes and, multiple markets. He loved the product so much. He gifted a ton of it to people, family and friends. And so you can learn a lot just by having these conversations and doing focus groups, which are relatively inexpensive to run.
Focus groups you don't hear about as much. I feel like in brands doing $1, $2, $5, $10, $30 million, I feel like the bigger you get, the more you do it. But I feel like that's something that a focus group costs $200, right?
Yeah. I mean, we bring them in, we offer them, we intentionally strive for people who don't know the brand or maybe have some familiarity with the brand but haven't worn it. That way they can have like a really totally independent, fresh perspective. We will do it with existing customers too. But yeah, we give them a little bit of credit at the end of the night. And oftentimes they end up spending like way more than the credit that they're given.
So it's a net, you make money.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I don't even know. We provide like some food and refreshments, but what we learn from it is so invaluable.
How big does that cohort, that sample size have to be for you guys to get conclusive evidence if you're going to do some sort of focus group? A couple hundred?
Usually our focus groups are like 15 to 20 people. And then we do them in multiple markets and then we aggregate that data. So what is meaningful? It's meaningful when you start to see real trends in that data. But I think people overweight the N, the sample size needs to be, 1,000 to be meaningful. I think if you have if you have 100 target demo customers telling you something and you're hearing something consistently, that's a really good indication that you need to be listening to that.
What does success look like in these partnerships with the NBA and the LPGA? Do you guys look at that as top of the funnel, brand awareness? I know you're selling product with the NBA. Is that if you break even, it's a big win? How does your company look at it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's been a big shift in marketing for digitally native brands over the last couple of years. And that's because I think most people have woken up to the fact that we've been lulled to sleep by a false sense of security in these, these paid metrics with Meta and Google. And that's because you have these hungry algorithms, which are all taking credit for the same sale. Cost of acquisition has gone up significantly in those channels. And so you're seeing more traditional forms of marketing that are a little squishier, a little hard to measure, come back into style because there's all these positive externalities with things that are a bit more challenging to measure. And there's quite a few negative externalities with the things that you can conclusively measure, but it's like hard to know whether or not those are really the things that are ultimately driving the sale. If I go to my neighbor and I'm like, hey, you should check out Rhone, and he goes to the Google and he types in Rhone.com and he clicks the sponsored ad, Google gets the credit for it. And in reality, it was word of mouth that drove the sale, right? So, just like any marketing funnel, you got top of funnel, which are, some of these brand awareness plays, mid funnel, bottom funnel. I think a lot of digitally native companies have been caught 90% of their spend is going into is bottom funnel, mid funnel activities. And what happens in a funnel when nothing's coming in the top? It dries up. I think one of the big learnings for us is that, we need to continue to drive brand awareness because our consumer metrics are crazy. Like the repeat rate, the loyalty rate, those are like so off the charts of traditional retail economics, but we need more of them and we need to find more people. And so it was a big investment in kind of top of funnel marketing, and on a relative basis, actually surprisingly inexpensive to get the number of eyeballs that we're getting through these partnerships.
So is CPMs, if you're not looking at like actual hard sales, is just like general awareness and impressions, is something that you can pseudo rationalize?
There's things that you can look at in terms of like unaided brand awareness scores, and yes, CPMs, and how many people are, kind of becoming aware of the brand as a result, or eyeballs. But that's effectively the focus of these partnerships, is to drive greater brand awareness so that there's brand recognition. Then somebody walks past the store on the street, or they get a paid ad. You're going to drive better efficiency with those other channels because you've got more people in the funnel.
It's so crazy how this is just common sense. Like at everything you just said, the craziest thing is you talking about someone telling the neighbor about Rhone. Yeah. Like that is the number one
totally
best form of marketing is word of mouth.
Yep.
It is absolutely crazy that we started the company and we went absolutely crazy on influencer, thousands and thousands and thousands. We'd give people art, let's say 75% of them would post.
Yep.
We're not tracking. We were just going, this was the beginning. Yeah. We were just going so hard. Company was doing really, really well. We stopped doing it because we needed to track it, and we didn't look at it as kind of top of the funnel. And for everybody listening, you're going to start seeing a ton more influencers because ironically, from this podcast, I've woken up to the fact that like it's common sense. If my cost to acquire a customer is X amount of dollars and my COGS to give someone 2 pieces of art is half that, if 2 people post it, am I going to get a sale?
Yeah.
And that's not even taking into account LTV.
It's simple math that way. It's funny. We're just repeating the same human habits that have existed for thousands of years. Like you were going to people who have built an audience, and we're saying to them, hey, we want to leverage your relationship with this audience in exchange for cash or product, or, depending on the person. And that math tends to work so much better than it does to go to Google and Meta and say, hey, we want to leverage your platform to run an ad. Because if you think about it, their core business runs on great content. And you know what's not generally great content? Ads. When you boost creator content or influencer content, it tends to be better. But, I don't even think this is a generational thing. I think this is just a human thing. People have gotten better about knowing when to ignore stuff. But when you have a trusted relationship with an influencer, which so many influencers are look, I used to be like, I don't get this. Like, I don't understand. It is hard. What they do is not easy. Like it might be easy to laugh at and be like, how do you make a living doing it? They have built a relationship in the same, not all that dissimilar to how preachers used to build relationships with congregations. They're talking to them consistently. They're building elements of trust. They're responding to comments and feedback. And that audience has value. And what brands are waking up to is we can now, instead of just going to like traditional outlets like media and TV and radio, we're going to go to these people who have built these independent relationships, and we can leverage that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
but it is
content creators and influencers, if you own your distribution and it's sticky and you're authentic, I think you're in a good spot. So let's just talk about the overall marketing mix there. I think before we do, I want to put a button on for everybody listening. Let's make this a challenge after this episode for you to lower your percent of marketing that you spend on Meta and Google. Why don't you take it down like 2%, 5%, 10%? That's something that, we were at one point, it's embarrassing. We were probably 85% Meta.
Most digitally native brands are.
Yeah. We were probably 85% Meta, 10% Google, and then the true cost of goods for our seating. And that was our whole entire marketing mix.
I just think that the world has started to shift away from, trust these huge platforms. I'll give you another example of this. My sister, I got to give her a plug. She used to run our customer service. And 4 years ago, she came to me. She's like, I've had this dream of something I want to go build. And I was like, do it. I'm whatever you need. Like, I'm here for you. So she launched this kind of sports media platform called Sportsish. And in 2.5, 3 years, she's built 200,000 followers on Instagram. And you know how much money she spent on advertising? $0.
Organic content and
amazing organic content targeted at women. It's basically the marriage of e-news and ESPN. So it's the pop culture stuff happening around sports, like who are the players on the field dating, what's happening heavily in women's sports.
The puck is going there. That's great.
Yeah. And she was so ahead of it. Like she knew, she has a podcast where she interviews the wives and girlfriends of athletes and the moms of athletes. And now with women's sports growing so much, a lot of amazing female athletes that she's able to get access to. And my point to our team is great organic content and storytelling is always going to win because these platforms rely on that to get audience engagement. They rely on advertising to produce revenue, but they're always going to prioritize great organic content and storytelling over ads because they need that to breathe. That is their oxygen.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the engagement of a flat product shot versus all the beautiful produced videos that you guys have been posting, the difference in engagement is wild. Night and day. So let's talk about that marketing mix. Where are you guys at from a ballpark percentage wise? How do you guys look at that?
We probably wouldn't share publicly what exactly the media mix is, but I would just say that we've seen a continued shift away from Meta and Google into other forms of marketing so that it's better balanced and better mixed. And we have started leaning into influencer. Influencer, by the way, has worked so much better on women's than it has ever worked on men's. I would just say that generally female influencers are just really, really good at how they, connect with their audience, authentically tell the story on why they like a product. And that's always been a challenge for us in men's, in fashion.
And I do feel like on the influencer side, you guys are doing a very good job of not doing these very kind of singular focus deals. You guys are integrating in content, integrating in storytelling. I saw that Ken Ride Out piece that you guys are doing. Great content. For anybody listening, you guys should check out Rhone's Instagram. Great content.
Ken's the man. Like he's just like, the other cool thing about this is I think we've gotten to a point where we're just, we're trying to have fun too. Like this is, we want to build a really healthy business, but we want to do stuff that we're interested in and that we like to do and that, stories we want people to hear.
Looking back over the last 10 years, what do you think has been one of the most impactful marketing levers that you guys have pulled? If you look back to almost a decade now.
Yeah. I don't know. We've never had like this single inflection point when, some big celebrities worn the product or, I think it's been a lot of, not dissimilar to what we talked about with Atomic Habits, it's been a lot of like small good decisions that have stacked up to lead to better results. And I think the best decisions I've made have been investing in good people that know what they're doing and trusting them to do good work. Early on, one of the things that we've always prioritized is saying, what is the best thing for the customer? And I do feel in general that most brands are kind of so me focused that it's like, hey, I just want to tell you about me. And like, what I mean by that is like, here's this new product, here's this new color, here's this product feature, here's why you should, here's why you should buy it. And the challenge with that is like, if you look at a brand relationship like you do a friendship, that's like the worst kind of friendship ever. It's like every time we get together, I just want to tell you what's going on in my life, and I never want to listen to you, and I never want to do what's important for you. And so I think one of the best branding or marketing decisions we've made is to, really try and put the customer first and the value of the customer first. And I love to tell this story. When COVID first happened in March, every brand on planet Earth was sending this same email, which is like, hey, here's what we're doing about COVID-19. We're closing our stores. We're taking care of our employees. And it's like, and really all they were saying is like, we're good people. But the customer was worried about where they were going to get hand sanitizer and toilet paper. They didn't care that like some brand that they like is taking care of their retail employees. And maybe they did, but so we decided to send an email because all of a sudden our entire team was like, Nate, we need to send this email. And I was like, I don't think anybody's going to care if we send this email. I think they're going to be like, great, another one of these exact same boilerplate emails. So we instead sent an email, which is like, hey, you're at home. You might be home for an extended period of time. Here's 30 great shows to stream and where to stream them. And here's 30 great books you can read or listen to. And here's, a few activities that you can do with your kids. And we just organically built this like really great email. I've never seen a response to an email like this one that we sent. And I think we may have included at the end, like, here's 5 great Rhone products that you can wear while you're, at home.
Just a little boilerplate.
Yeah. But it was like, people were like, thank you for sending this, because this is actually valuable for me. And I think we may have started the email. It was like, if you're really curious about what we're doing with our team or our products or our supply chain, here's a link. And it took you to a landing page and it said like the same boilerplate stuff that was in all these other emails. Like, but really, we're thinking about you and what you're going through. And so I try and make sure that we're oriented that way in how we develop products, how we market the product, how we speak, about the company.
I love that. Maybe just think it would have been a good GWP to give someone a hand sanitizer. That was a good idea.
That's true.
That just popped in my head.
Yeah.
All right. So all this marketing driving towards obviously the website and or into retail. So let's dive into retail. You guys got 16 stores. Do you have 16 right now or currently?
16, yeah.
16 retail stores in the US. I love how it's a community hub for these muscle and mind events, which I want to touch on as well too. But the thing that I found, which I saw on the internet, which was surprising to me, is when you look at these stores, I would say there's 3 buckets. The biggest bucket, the most common bucket is it's a loss leader. People are losing money. Some people are breaking even and very few people are making money.
Yeah.
You guys are making money in these stores.
Yeah. I don't believe in having stores as just like a marketing engine. I think in digitally native brands, people were using that as an excuse of like, let's see what the e-com lift. And so the halo effect justifies having these stores in their existence. And I think retailers have figured out how to make money from retail for a long time. Why would you walk away from that model? And I think it's just lowering your standards on it. And by the way, it is hard. It's not, being good at e-com does not mean that you will have a good retail business. And I convinced myself for like 3 years while we were doing pop-ups that we could do it because, we had smart people, we had the same product, but it is such a different business. So we had to go and find experts to build out our retail strategy. And we're still improving at it. Our stores are getting, like, from a comp basis, they're growing at an enormous rate because every year we're like, oh, let's learn that and roll that out over the fleet. And it's a lot easier to run 16 stores than it was ever to run 1 or 2 stores because you can hire smart people and you can spread those centralized costs over those stores and you can start to put in process. And so now we're in a place where it's like, man, if we can make this level of 4-wall contribution in our stores, how many stores are we going to open? It's like almost as many as we can, in the right markets and the right locations, which is a different challenge. But I think it's harder than people realize. And omnichannel brands, which is almost a requirement now, it means you have to be good at kind of everything, which is why I think so few new brands are succeeding because cost of acquisition have gone up. Investor money to invest in consumer companies isn't what it was 10 years ago, where investors had convinced themselves that these were like mini tech companies, which were not. And so it's harder to build that level of scale. And you have the, GDPR rules that have added in a level of ambiguity into the customer data, which you can't see as readily as you could before. So that's why I strongly believe brands that are like 8 to 15 years old are this new vintage of unique brands started by digital first thinkers and executives. And those are going to be the brands of the future. And they're going to be the ones that are taking the most market share.
And obviously you own your customer as well there too, and you completely own the experience.
And we already have that level of data so that we can leverage that as we build out future stores, site selection, what markets we should be entering, categories we should be doing.
So you mentioned leveraging data there, and I've been so surprised because I'd like to think I've had really smart people on this podcast thus far. Everybody's had a different answer. Why do you go to a specific location? How are you choosing locations for your retail stores?
There's several big factors. And, it goes back to the comment that we were talking about before. Brands convince themselves because they've had some success, either revenue standpoint or customer standpoint, that if they open the store, people will come. The Field of Dreams line, like, just build it, people will come. That's not how it works. You need to go into a market where you have an existing customer base so that you can build off of that customer base. And so we target e-com areas where we already show real strength. We also use some really great mobile data. There's a tool called Placer.ai that you can use. You can see how your customers are effectively moving and where they spend their time, even within centers where they'll kind of aggregate and there's heat maps there.
Let's stop there for a second. Placer.ai can show heat maps on where people are moving within your stores.
It's anonymized, not within the store, within a center. So like where traffic is going to be at its strongest. And you can kind of see, you can get this level of detail where you could go to the right street. Like let's pick.
You're saying not in your specific store. You're saying like on like a random.
Yeah. Like take Fifth Avenue, for example. We know Fifth Avenue is a great retail store, but you could be on the wrong side of the wrong street and not have success. So it's not enough to know like, hey, I need to be in this zip code. You need to know where in the center you need to show up and where your customer is going to be.
How granular can that get though? Like, let's just say you're going into a mall. Can it tell you general vicinity within a mall? Should you be on the north side or the south side?
Generally, you need to be more reliant on localized data for that, which is, much more qualitative and less quantitative to get answers to that question. But you can see within the mall where there are heat maps on the traffic and where people are spending more time based on cell phone data.
So let's have the the conversation with the guy that's not here. So I was under your thinking. It's like, okay, we have all these customers in Green Bay. Let's open up a store in Green Bay. Yeah. We know that's the lowest risk. His thought is we want to go where we don't have the customer in a good location. He's more of a mall guy because the guy in Green Bay, we're going to win on LTV anyway. We have them already. We want to go find new customers.
Yeah.
So that was his way of thinking, which I found interesting. I
think if you are Patagonia or Lululemon, that's a model that will work really well for you. And, he knows his customer might be different than my customer. But what I know for sure is that retail success is predicated on showing up where you have an existing customer base and you're trying to grow your customer base. And right now, unless you're driving billions of dollars of top line revenue, there are so many available customers to you in markets where you're densely saturated. Think about Starbucks. Starbucks opens stores literally across the street from each other.
Yeah.
Why? Because they have so many available customers in those markets that they know they can, it's going to be slightly cannibalistic, but it's not going to be cannibalistic enough that it's going to, and we see this in the e-com data. Like, yes, we might, if we go open a store in a market, we might see some conversion from e-com into retail. But mainly what we see is the LTVs and the repeat rates of those customers go way up because that means that they're going to buy more frequently. They're going to walk past the store and they're going to be like, I need to try that. And then they're going to buy it online.
That goes back to that common sense is also another touch point too.
Totally.
It's a billboard there. What do you think is the biggest mistakes that you guys have made through 0 to 15 plus stores?
I think the biggest mistake is we were slow to move to women's. We should have gone to women's faster. I think it's a huge market, huge opportunity. And then I think some of the biggest mistakes have been my mistakes, like, just investing in team and people and, making good personnel decisions. Those have been hard lessons to know, like when to go out and hire an expert and when to just be like, oh, I'm going to go with the person who's been here from the beginning.
And when you say not do women's earlier, are you just saying because that mitigates your risk and increases revenue on a per store perspective because you can buy for both people in there?
Yeah, I just think that it's a super competitive market, and it takes time. It's like the 8-year thing. So I wish I would have started that clock sooner. We weren't prepared for it. We didn't have the team for it. We didn't have the resources to do it well. So I think it's all worked out, the way it has, but I wish I would have prioritized it earlier.
Great experience with the one that we went into. What are you guys looking at for this year? You guys are in 16 now. Is the goal to grow that to 18, 20? Like what does that look like?
We're going to be opening quite a few stores this year. I don't know if we publicly announced the number, but what I know is that last year we slowed it. We only opened 2 stores last year. And the reason for that is because with the introduction of women's, it changes the store footprint. It changes the layout. It changes how you think about it. So we had to see how that was going to change. So we did a lot of retrofits of our existing stores. And that is informing what the store of the future is going to look like, how big it should be, what the layout should be, And so we've started to make some of those decisions, and that's impacting the leases that we're signing today.
You're a systematic ninja here, all on data. I love it. Let's go into retail. So you guys are in Dillard's, Nordstrom's, Bloomingdale's, over 150 top tier accounts like golf and resort locations, tons of gyms. I guess let's just start with just what's your holistic strategy just for retail?
You mean in terms of the wholesale accounts that we work with?
Correct.
I think it starts and ends with, we need to believe that these are places where they're going to take care of the customer in the same way that we take care of the customer, and that it's going to put us, look, we could go into Costco tomorrow. We could go into, some of these bigger accounts, and you can see a ton of revenue come from those. And by the way, Costco's amazing. I love Costco, but from a fashion perspective, it doesn't necessarily elevate you in terms of the hearts and minds of the customer. And I think controlling your distribution strategy is something that a lot of brands have made mistakes on. So we're really careful about, one, we don't want wholesale necessarily to become the dominant distribution channel, because then we lose some of the control of who the customer is, the data. But the other thing is, you can start to create this whole level of concentration risk that if you lose that one big account, and accounts can move in unique ways. It could be completely independent to their business. So we do some with majors, Dillard's, Nordstrom, really great partners. But then we have a lot of specialty stores. So, we're sitting here in Westport, Connecticut. There's Mitchell's, there's Darien Sports Shop, there's Richard's. These are like high-end, great stores where we know they're going to take great care of the customer. They're going to be educated on the product. They're going to tell the consumer why it's better, why it's differentiated. But we have thousands now of these doors and green grass accounts, golf courses and others. And that helps us so that if all of a sudden a major, goes out of business or is like merging with another major and they decide to make a change in terms of their merchandising mix, the business isn't going to fall apart. So wholesale is complicated too. It's a very different channel than e-com or your own brick and mortar retail, but it's a very powerful one, and it can be something that drives the success of a business.
Yeah, for people more like earlier entrepreneurs, I think something that, in the beginning I didn't quite understand, and it's obvious to us now, but you can only go down in distribution. You can't go up. So if you're in Bloomingdale's or Nordstrom, you can go down into Zoomies and Tilly's. Yeah. If you're in Zoomies and Tilly's, you can go down into Costco and Target.
Yeah, you cannot go the other way.
But you're not going from Costco to Nordstrom. Another huge lesson. I don't even know if you know this, but I got my start to my career with the hat company Melon. Yeah. I was original partner there in CMO, and we toured the US. We raised money, 40 states, 160 retailers is kind of where I got my MBA in apparel. And in some of the markets, we took the second best account, and then we knock on the door of the first account at the trade show. And they're like, bro, you're a number 2. There's not only, you can't even leave there and come to us. Yeah. You're done. Yeah. You're soiled in this.
You are dead to us.
You're soiled in this city. Yeah. So that's a really, really real thing for everybody listening. Who's a dream retailer? We got to get this on record. Who's a dream retailer that you're not in yet? Giving full respect to all of the ones that we talked about. You got some nice ones here.
Yeah. I don't even know who I would say. I mean, I know some that I'm targeting right now and that we're in active conversations, or we're in like a few doors, but we're not in every door. But I think the best retailers for us are the ones that, that I think do a great job of their customer representation, great job of representing the brands. There's a lot, I'm I'm really excited about REI, and I think that can be a great business. We can show up in so many different places. That's what's so unique about our brand is we have a great business in the resort and spa world where high-end luxury resorts are carrying the product. And then, places like REI that, show more of the active product.
Yeah, I actually had no idea. And then we went to the store. I felt like a schlep. I put on like a sweatsuit, and now like some guys with his mom, and he's like on like a full-on suit.
Yeah.
I had no idea that the range was that big.
Yes, a good old sweatsuito.
I liked it. It was a finalist for me. Last piece on retail, and then we'll move on. What would you say for someone that is just looking to get into retail? They're in no retailers. What piece of advice would you give them?
I would say, so getting into work with partner retailers.
Yeah, any of the partner retailers, the Nordstroms, the Bloomingdale's.
Yeah, I think I would focus on why is your product differentiated? Why is it better? How can you tell that story? Because ultimately, there's risk for a retailer to change out a brand for a new brand. So they need to understand why it's better, why it's unique, why it deserves its place in the market. And what is I was surprised early on. They were really interested in like, what was our marketing strategy? Where were we going to be spending our dollars and our time and our money and our energy? And that's because our marketing influences the sale of our product in their stores. And so being able to articulate that carefully and having a lot of respect for the businesses that they've built. I've seen so many digitally native entrepreneurs who are like, we're smarter than all these people because we built our business online. And I'm like, these companies have been around for, in some cases, hundreds of years. They've built huge amounts of trust with their customers. You cannot ignore that. You ignore that to your peril. So I would just say like, trust and respect the partner, trust and respect their relationship with their customer, and then learn how to help them storytell your company and your products so that you can be successful in their store.
That's a bar right there. We're going to go on to the next piece. This is going to be fun. I wanted to start with this, but we figured we'd get to this more towards the end. L Catterton, $30 billion plus company. Ironically, D. Murphy, our first guest, got an investment from them.
Yep.
You guys did something that you just don't see. Not only did you buy out a pre-existing investor, but you bought out a behemoth. I think that's one of the most blue chip investors in the apparel space.
Totally.
I guess let's just start with why.
Yeah. I mean, it is such a crazy, I still pinch myself that we pulled it off. But, Catterton, first of all, I only have really positive things to say about them. They are, I think, at least they were, the largest consumer and like pure consumer investment fund globally. They've partnered with LVMH's arm, L Capital. That's why they go by L Catterton now. And they know what they're doing. They're really smart, capable operators. And the two founders of their growth fund, John Owsley and Michael Farello, are as smart and capable as they come. And they were great partners with us for 4 years. But
how early did they come in? They come in Series A?
They came in year 3 of the business. And, it's funny because we got approached by the Gap to buy the company. And a week later, we got a term sheet from L Catterton to invest in the company. And we were doing, single digit millions of dollars. So I was like shocked. We're so early on. We had just clearly struck a chord, and, we were starting to get in the hearts and minds of a couple of key people. And within a week of each other, we have this offer to buy the company from one of the biggest companies in the world. And then an offer from the largest consumer private equity fund in the world. And I was under the impression that, once we do this, I'm like, we're done. Like, I can't believe it. Like we win, like the game's over. But the reality is once you take outside capital, there's a big change in the business and the structure. And so I had fallen in love with our mission and what we were building. And we were in year 4.5 of Catterton's hold period. And most people...
Context for everybody listening, the hold period is a venture outcome is they have a finite amount of years where they expect to get their money back?
Exactly. So generally, private equity or growth equity, even venture, is like 5 to 7 years expected after they make their investment. And then they also have benchmark returns. So for venture, it might be like a 5 to 10x benchmark return. For private equity, usually it's a safer bet. So it's a lower benchmark return, 3 to 5x. And so their goal is to 3 to 5x their money in 5 to 7 years. Now, of course, that doesn't always work out in venture. Like 70% of the investments go to zero, 2 return their money, and 1 returns 100-fold, and it pays for, all the rest. In private equity and growth equity, it works a bit differently. You get very few companies that go to zero. You get a bunch of companies that will return exactly what they invested or a little bit at a loss. And you get a few companies that make, good single-digit benchmark returns. And then you get some companies that make, 10 to 15x returns. So, I knew we were in year 4 to 5 of this hold period. And
this wasn't a prior conversation. This is just you in your head.
This is just me in my head thinking this through. And a couple of things had dramatically changed in the company. One, we had really started to invest in building out a very strong and talented executive team. And I could just tell once we got these people in the business, I was like, holy cow, these people are so much smarter than me. This is going to work at a totally different level now. Like, how could we not win? Like the product that we're developing now and the strategy decisions that we're making, there's just so much better than what we were doing before. So I started to have more conviction in the business, and I started to really fall in love with our mission. And I was like, I don't know that I want to give this up. And I don't know that I want the end of the story to be like, oh, we built this nice little 9-figure, business and we sold it and we like right off into the sunset. Like, what would I actually do? And so I was talking with a mentor and friend of mine, and I was like, I don't know, I'm like really nervous we're going to sell. And I just don't know if that's like the right thing. And he's like, if I were you, I'd try to figure out how to buy the whole thing. And I was like, yeah, well, that's ridiculous. And he's like, and by the way, this is a highly credible guy. And he's like, Nate, what if you just raised a vehicle and you went to Catterton and you said, hey, I want to find a way to buy out your position. I was like, they don't do, this is not something that is done. And he's like, I don't know, you should think about it. So I went to work out with a friend of mine who's actually an investment banker. And I was like, hey, is this even like possible? And he was like, well, I suppose you could create an SPV, raise money into that SPV, and then use that to negotiate with Catterton on an exit.
Let's stop you for a second there. So this SVP, I want to know more about this this vehicle. Had you felt the waters a bit, or are you just doing this completely on your own?
Well, from the time we started the company, we have had people reach out being like, I would love to invest in the company. And one of the nice things about making really nice, great product is that you tend to attract really wealthy people who have money and are willing to invest. And so, some of our best investors have just started as customers and then they've expressed interest in being a part of the company. And so from the beginning, I just made a list. Like anytime I got that email, I was like, oh, we're not raising capital. We got a big investment from L Catterton, but thanks so much. And take the email, Or I'd meet really wealthy people who were like, oh, I like your brand. And I'd like go back, I just had this list of like possible investors. I don't know why. It's just like, I think with my first company, I had made so many mistakes. And the main mistake that entrepreneurs make is they run out of capital. It's not that they don't have good businesses or good business ideas. They just run out of cash. And I never wanted that to be me. So I just wanted to make sure I always had I had the list of people to call. So yeah, that's what we did. I started reaching out to people. I started like a few easy conversations, and some people were like, absolutely, I would love to be involved in this next stage. And I had enough conviction that I went to Catterton and I had the conversation. I was like, hey, look, I know this is atypical, but I've just kind of decided if we're going to move forward with this, I'd love to find a way to really, they owned a minority stake in the business, but with most private equity transactions, they have real teeth in those transactions. They can force certain outcomes. And I was like, I really would just love to, I'd love to find a way to, have full control of the business again. And I'll, credit to them. They were like, we get it. This is what you want. Let's have a conversation. And they came back and they were like, respectfully, we love the company, we love the brand, we're not really interested in selling. It's like, oh man. So I kind of like gave up on the idea. But then in 22, as you remember, Russia invades Ukraine, multiples in consumer companies are falling, like down through the floor.
Right after the iOS update, which you probably were more on Meta than you are now.
Totally. And they had exposure to a couple of companies that were deeply impacted. And I just went back to them. I was like, hey, remember that conversation? Like, I can get you a benchmark return. and I know this. I know that's what you need, but I just need you to give me the ability to get this done. And they were great, and they partnered with me through it. The original partner at the fund is still on our board and is hugely impactful. And we were able to bring in some great high net worth individuals and some good family offices who are very tactical and very helpful. And yeah, we kind of refreshed the cap table, and it set us up in a position to continue to go and build for the long term.
What I'm curious about is, obviously that was venture and they had an expected outcome, but the vibe that I'm getting from you is you're probably going to have this, your son might run this company. So how do you communicate that to these new investors?
Yeah, I think there's always ways to create monetization events for your investors. And I don't know what the future is, but I know that what it's changed for me is I now think with a much longer term lens than I did. When you start having what is, in some ways an artificial time clock, but feels very real, that you're trying to drive towards a result, you might make very different decisions. And making good long-term decisions, like for example, going into women's, that would have been a huge risk with an L Catterton investment if they're, thinking about exiting in 2 to 3 years. What if it goes terribly? But we know this women's might take 3 to 5 years to get right. But it's a great long-term decision when you think about the total addressable market and the size of the business. You think about a deal with the NBA. Well, that's expensive and it's a long-term investment. And how do we, the clock in which you're making decisions changes, and the framework on how you make those decisions changes with the structure that we have now. So I think we're making better long-term decisions, and that ironically is leading to better outcomes. Since we did that, the company's more than doubled in size in just 2 years. So
wow.
I believe that some of this was just mindset, like in some ways, having a great private equity partner feels like a nice safety blanket. And we effectively like burned the boats on that. Now it's like, if this doesn't work, it's entirely my fault. And so I think that's also helped drive better results.
You got some interesting new investors. I saw Tebow, Steve Young, Charlotte Hornets co-owner, and the Sixers and Devils co-owner.
Yep.
Stemming off that, what would you say is the ideal investor for you?
I mean, I think the best investors are ones that are not going to get in your way and are always asking the question, what can I do to help? I've actually personally invested in about 50 consumer companies. And my whole thing, when I talk to the entrepreneur, I'm like, you are never going to get a call from me being like, what did you do in revenue last month? What did I'm only going to ask you the question, what do you need? How can I help? Are there any introductions I can make? And I just believe philosophically that's what great investors do. Of course, there are great investors that get deeply involved operationally, but good minority investors, they bet on the jockey, and that's the decision that they're making. And I think they offer to be helpful versus create incremental work for the entrepreneur and the founder.
Love it. Last thing on this investor piece, I would imagine I mentioned some names and there's some other big names. You got to give me a piece of advice. You got some big names here. I know you talk to these guys. Give me a name and a big piece of advice you've got from them.
So I'll just go back to what I already spoke about. So Brian Rolap, who's not a name that you mentioned, but is a name that people I think will know in many ways. He's an heir apparent to Roger Goodell at the NFL. He's built their entire media business. A very good friend. And he was the one who was like, if I were you, I would try and figure out how to own the entire business or control the entire business. And I think that was just a tremendously impactful piece of advice at a key moment for us. But most of these guys are like, they care about me as much as they care about the business. And that feels really good to have investors like that who are trying to help you make good decisions for yourself as much as they are trying to drive a good return.
We're rounding the corner here. I'm going to fire away some random questions before we get into the official lightning round.
Okay.
Can't lie. I knew who your dad was.
Yep.
Okay.
No, I don't.
I'm from
hide
New
from
York.
it.
I'm a Knick fan. I know in the 90s, context for everybody listening, I did not know he was the youngest GM at the age of 28 for the Jazz.
Yep.
He ran the Knicks and MSG for 10 years, founded or been a part of a bunch of professional teams. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned from your pops? I
would say that you can be a tremendously good human and a great business leader. He is, people who know him, like, I think people who don't know him have a perception of like, is he really that good of a guy? And then you spend time with him, you're like, he's way better than like you'd expect. I think of, famous people sometimes, and you wonder like, are they really that good? Like, with their family and he is just such an amazing human and such a good person. And that drives me to try and like be authentically who I am, not just, on a podcast or, when I'm in front of someone, but, when it's just me and my son, or it's me and my wife, I want to be the same person in every arena. And I think that's something that he really, truly lives.
Legendary. You just, passively just said that you invested in 50 plus companies. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the biggest thing you look for in investing in companies?
It's the founder. I mean, for sure. It's the operator. The old adage is true. You can take a B or C idea with an A operator and have a great outcome. And you can have an A idea with a B and C operator and have a terrible outcome. So I think it's always less about the idea and more about the person who's running the idea.
Completely agree with you. You started 4 companies before you were 30. What advice would you give to someone in their early 20s when you're starting a company?
Well, first, I would really challenge the notion that everybody is an entrepreneur or should be an entrepreneur. I think we've kind of celebrated this idea of like owning your own business and, incredible flexibility. And I think some people, and I can tell just spending like an hour with you, you're just wired that way. Like it's not a choice.
I could run through a wall right now, bro. I can run through a wall. We can go 10 hours.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, you either are, or not you either are or you aren't, but like you tend to have certain tendencies to make you wired that way. And so I would just like challenge the notion that you have to be an entrepreneur. I think some people are better off with some level of security, some level of less risk. And, but if you are one of those kinds of people, I think the main thing that I would do is I would ask as many questions and I would talk to as many smart people as I could to try and de-risk things before I go into it. That doesn't mean sometimes ignorance is your best friend. Like if you knew how hard something was, then you'd never get started. But I do think the worst thing you can do is try and solve things in a vacuum or in isolation. That's why I believe in the power of experts. And I believe in talking to experts and asking questions like, how did you do this? Because those simple conversations that I've had with people, I'm like, why have I been struggling with this for like months or years? And it's like, you just answered this question in like 5 seconds that I've been struggling with. And so, yeah, I mean, I just spoke to this awesome guy that actually lives here in Westport. He's the original retail employee at J. Crew, built J. Crew Retail. It was the COO and president there. And I started like firing off all these things that I've been wondering about. And he was like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, oh, there are simple answers to these questions that I thought were so complicated. So yeah, I would lean heavily into the power of experts. And I would also say people are amazing at helping you if you just ask for it.
You gotta ask. It's so crazy. Do you know what I did recently? It's gonna blow your fucking mind. I don't know if you've gotten to this other layer. The experts thing is huge. Like that's, remember I told you like things coming out of it. I obviously learned an insane amount, but that's one thing. Dude, I spent $79 on a course. First course I ever bought like a month and a half ago. Game changing.
Yeah. You were like, why
I'm like, why? I wonder what a $700 course looks like.
Yeah.
Yes, that's another thing that I would challenge the people listening to is buy a course or reach out to someone. Yeah. I do think, as long as you're a good human, like most entrepreneurs do want to help.
Totally.
So yeah, just reaching out is huge. It's funny because I had the question, easier or harder to create a brand now versus 10 years ago? That's the last question before we get into it.
Definitely harder. No question.
To go back and forth on that one, I think I agree. It's so much harder. I think acquiring a customer is so much harder now. And if you got past that iOS update and you hit a big pool of customers that you can sell back into, you're in a great position.
Yeah, your ability to find lookalike audience from an existing pool of customers versus starting with no customers and trying to build an audience is like, and not to mention just the investable capital is just so much less. Like, I think there's always been good, smart consumer investors. They value companies differently than tech investors. But what happened for like a period of 5 to 7 years is tech investors were like, ooh, this consumer thing's really interesting. And we're competing so heavily on tech stuff and there's not enough good quality deal flow. Let's just start funneling money over here. And then you had them being like, you need to grow 6x this year. And they killed a bunch of these companies that just were never meant to do that. And it's like, oh yeah, it's okay if you lose $60 million this year because, we're trying to grow and we're trying to reinvent footwear, whatever it is. It just,
I could go on so long again, I want to give people, especially the first time entrepreneurs, there was a window where you could trade your company on top line revenue. You could sell your company.
Yeah.
You're doing $10 million and you're making $1 million. You could sell your company for $20 million, $25 million. Now it's on a multiple of EBITDA with the bottom 5, 6, 10 EBITDA. So you're looking at 25 or 30 million versus $10 million because people are sobering up.
I think people have, I think they've just shifted, and I think it will happen again. It's cyclical. And companies are, still in some ways being valued on revenues depending on the company. Like you've seen some deals recently where you're like, head scratcher on some of the valuations. But I think ultimately it comes down to you're seeing more consumer-led, focused investors doing the deals that they know they can do and where they can make money versus being oversaturated by tech investors.
I would say the last thing on that too is this is where, for me, I'm still on the first lap with a lot of things. So from an experience perspective, if I did want to sell my company, I now know the next time when it's frothy and someone's going to give me 2.5 or 3 times the top,
to take it.
I'm fucking taking it.
Yeah.
All right. So lightning round.
Timing is important.
So lightning round, I'm just going to fire off some quick, pick one or the other. A young OBJ or Malik Neighbors?
Malik Neighbors. I love Malik. I mean, OBJ, I'm a Giants fan, so like this is a hard question for me. And I loved OBJ, but I think Malik, he made Daniel Jones look like a great freaking quarterback. And I think Daniel Jones is in some ways unfairly judged, but yeah, I got to go with Malik. He's also my son's favorite player.
We don't need to get into it, but I'm actually high on Daniel Jones. But that's I'm
mean,
high on Daniel Jones.
I don't think we should have given him the contract that we gave him, but I think we should have taken care of Saquon. But
fun fact, he's not like him, but he reminds me of my favorite NFL player of all time. And I went to the same college, and it is the funniest joke.
You're a Duke guy?
Huh?
You're a Duke guy? Or,
no, Delaware.
Okay.
Do you know what I'm going to talk about? I loved it. I could talk shit to all my friends because they're like, "You fucking love this guy. He sucks." Joe Flacco.
Oh man,
who just had a resurgence.
You can't. Joe Flacco. He at least won Super Bowl with the Ravens.
Yeah, he won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. And then he just had a random resurgence with the Browns
at like 41.
Yeah, I love it. Early mornings or late nights? I know, but
yeah, I am. I'm early mornings. I used to be both, but I'm definitely early mornings now.
Strength or cardio?
I'm a hybrid guy. Like I believe in both. I ran 4 miles this morning, and yesterday I did like a heavy broy, like arms and back workout.
LJ or Sprewell? I
love Latrell Sprewell. I got to go Sprewell. I loved LJ too.
I'm going LJ. Yep. That 4-point play.
I was there when he had the 4-point play. That was unforgettable. Grandmama, I love LJ, but Sprewell, it just feel like he had so much unfair like baggage, and the way he came into New York and he's such a quality guy. People didn't know that about him. He's like, I remember the first time I met him, he had like reading glasses on and like a sweater, and I was like, oh, you were not who I thought you were going to be. And he's like so well spoken, so nice. I used to wear a Sprewell jersey all the time.
I have a Sprewell jersey, and for context for people listening, Sprewell was kicked out of the league for choking PJ Carlesimo before going to the Knicks.
Yeah. And PJ basically had said to him, like, put more mustard on that ball, and Latrell's lost it. But knowing Latrell, like, probably had a bad moment, but also maybe PJ deserved it.
One word to describe Ben, your brother.
He's the best. I love him. He's the greatest.
Best quote.
Well, I've already given a couple. But I'll just reiterate one that I've said, which is that which you persist in doing will become easier to do. Not that the nature of the thing itself has changed, but your power to do has increased.
Talked about this off camera, but I want to put it on camera. Best part about Connecticut. I'm a big Connecticut guy now.
Yeah, I think the best part about Connecticut are the people. It's not the weather for sure, but you get amazing people here, and you get the proximity to New York City. I think Connecticut is amazing.
Love it.
It's not the taxes.
Last couple questions. Favorite book or podcast, and why?
My favorite podcast is Business Wars. I don't know if you've listened to it. I just love it. Like basically chronicles like 2 historic, like, Coke, Pepsi, or Nintendo, Sega. And I just love hearing these stories. I listened to one recently about Ben and Jerry's versus Haagen-Dazs. Like, I just find it so fascinating, these business journeys. And favorite book was always The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. I know it sounds trite, but I think Stephen Covey was such a master thinker. And the way he approached self-development is just like so practical. So
It's a banger. I told my nephew that book on Atomic Habits. So
yeah,
I'm with you on that. I want you to think about this because you've invested in 50 companies here. So who's going to get it? Entrepreneur or brand that you want to give flowers to and why? Bill gave you flowers, by the way, too.
Yeah, shoot. I was going to say him, but now it feels like I'm just recycling it.
Those are the mayors.
Okay, I know. So I'm this may feel a little bit self-promotional, but it's a really cool story. There's a company called Clean Simple Eats. They're effectively a supplement and meal planning company, but they make the greatest protein powder on planet Earth. New Zealand grass-fed, cold-pressed whey. But the founders, JJ and Erica, they're a couple. I met them because JJ was a model for us in our early e-com days. And that company is on track to be a 9-figure revenue company in the next year. And when I met them, they were doing like less than $1 million. And they've just powerhouse couple team. They're such good quality people. No one deserves it more than they do. So I got to give them a shout out. I really am just been so pleased to be along for the journey with them.
I love that. I'm going to check that brand out. Last question, man. How big can Rhone be?
I think, honestly, I genuinely believe this. Sky's the limit for us. I think we will be $1 billion company in this decade, certainly from a valuation standpoint, but from a revenue standpoint, I think that's highly achievable for us. And from there, it's really about where do we want to take the company. But, I hope Rhone will exist for the next 50 to 100 years. And in order to do that, we need to make certain decisions about what we invest in, the people we bring around the table, where we're spending our time, effort, and energy. But that's what I believe with all my core.
I believe it, man. Dude, I had an amazing time.
I
did this a little different than how I usually do it. I definitely want everybody to like and comment on how you like this episode. Where can everybody find you?
Personally, I'm not super active on social, but the most active place I'm active on is LinkedIn and then Instagram, and it's all just at Nate Checketts.
Amazing. What about Rhone? Rhone.com?
Rhone, all at Rhone, Rhone.com. Yeah, go and send me a message. Like, what I will tell you is we stand behind the quality of our product. I would put it up against anybody in the market. I personally wear test everything that we make on the men's side. And I'm a big believer in quality, and that over time, that's going to win you customers.
And we're going to end with a personal endorsement from me, the commuter pant, which I am wearing. Formerly, I would wear tight pants, and then I started dating a girl that was younger than me. She said my pants were too tight. Then I had to go baggy. So I have to find kind of in between.
Yeah.
This is nice, guys. It's
good.
Comfy, it's luxe, it's in between, and it feels rich. I feel nice right now.
Nice. It comes in 3 different fits too. So depending on what who you want to impress.
We're going
baggy's in, man. It's crazy.
It's tough,
wild,
bro. It's tough.
I know.
It's tough
because for us, like it's like
just when I was getting in shape, it's like we going baggy.
Yeah, I know.
It looks ridiculous.
Yeah, you're looking fit.
Thanks, bro. Had an amazing time, bro. Thank you.
No, thanks so much.